MULATSCHAG.
Hey, what's up? I'm Pierre.
And I'm Chuck from the band Simple Plan.
And you're watching MULATSCHAG, the only TV you need.
MULATSCHAG! In your early years, you had the chance to work with legendary producer Bob Rock.
Yes.
How did you get in touch with that giant?
Well, our first album was produced by Arnold Lanni, and it did really, really well. But we always liked the heavier side of sound. And so after selling, double platinum or whatever it was in America, our record label basically told us, you can pick whoever you want for your next record. You can basically give us your top 5 list of people, and he was a top. So they reached out to Bob Rock and said, you want to produce a Simple Plan record? And luckily for us, he said yes.
He had worked with a band that was managed by the same company as us too, so we had a bit of a connection like that. So we reached out, and
he said yes.
He loves to work with bands from Canada, and he loved the songs that we had, and he was on board.
In that connection, you guys co-wrote a song for Mötley Crüe. I mean, how cool is that?
That was one of the most incredible things ever. Obviously, we're all fans of the 80s, rock music and Mötley Crüe and all that stuff. And we had a song that we had written possibly for our second album. And we sent all the demos to Bob Rock. And we didn't record all of them. And then later, like 6 months later, a year later, after our record was done, he was like, hey, we're looking for songs for Mötley Crüe, and I remember that song that you wrote, If I Die Tomorrow, I'd like to play it for Mötley Crüe. Is that okay? And I'm like, fuck yeah, of course I'd love it if you play for them. And then later he was like, I think we want to record it. And I'm like, fuck yeah, you can record it. And then later he was like, I think it's going to be a single off the greatest hits, whatever they were going to do.
Yeah, it was the lead single.
And we're like, fuck yeah. So it just really happened without us pushing it at all. And it was really the relationship with Bob Rock. And the funny thing is that years and years later, we were playing a show with Black Veil Brides, and they're big fans of 80s music and Mötley Crüe. And when I told them that, they're like, are you serious? That's our favorite Mötley Crüe song. I was like, whoa, this is so crazy.
Yeah, I still remember when Bob called us. We were in England on tour, and he's like, yeah, it's going to be the first single, Mötley Crüe. We just recorded it today, and they love it, and we're in. I was like, it was a bit surreal. It's like, oh, wow. How did that happen,
And the cool thing is that their version sounds better than I think what our version would have been.
And lyrically, it was so perfect. They just came out with The Dirt, where you learn that 2 of the guys almost died and overdosed, and they were dead. And it's like, if I die tomorrow, it really fit with the theme of that book and of the band, and they're kind of like their whole legend, of being kind of living on the edge like that. And I just felt like it was they were such a better artist to sing that song than we were. It just fitted them so much better. So I think it happened in the perfect way,
Yeah.
Have you ever covered Mötley Crüe songs?
Never have. No. I love there's a lot of songs that I really like.
I would cover one would be Kickstart My Heart.
Yeah, Kickstart My Heart. It's amazing.
Because it's fast. It's one of the the fastest song they have, and we usually play fast songs, You should do that. That would go off, man.
Yeah.
MULATSCHAG.
You named yourself after a Sam Raimi movie from 1988. Was Evil Dead also a choice back then?
Did you say the movie was in 1988?
1990.
Yeah. No, it's funny, actually. I'd love to take credit, but when we first started, we have a friend of ours who's a producer, and he owned a little studio in Montreal, and he let us use his studio to make our first demos, and he helped us, produce those. And he was the one that came one day at the session that we would do in the evenings, because it was in an office building that couldn't, have sound. And he came in one day and he said, I just saw this movie. It's a really good movie. It's called A Simple Plan. It would be a great band name. And we're like, pretty good. Maybe we'll use that. We had a show coming up, so we needed a name. So we said, we'll use it for this show, but then we'll change it later. And then we never changed it.
And here we are, 23 years later.
Yeah.
Still the same name.
So you weren't that much into Sam Raimi. Have you seen Evil Dead?
No, I didn't even know. I didn't even know that he was the person. All I know, I've seen the movie A Simple Plan, and I'm a big fan of Billy Bob Thornton and other guy.
Paxton. Bill Paxton.
Bill Paxton and Billy Bob Thornton. The late Bill Paxton, actually. But yeah, I didn't know who the director was.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He's a great, famous director.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Evil Dead is.
I should know this. Thank you.
Yeah. Now you can do a movie evening with all 3 Evil Dead.
Nice. Yeah, I'll have to check them out.
There you go.
MULATSCHAG.
Please tell us about that Warp Tour when you went to see Blink 182.
Yeah, there was a Warp Tour, and it was in Montreal and in Toronto and obviously everywhere. And Chuck had a bit of a relationship because we had a band before this band that we played some shows with Blink, and Chuck had maintained a small fan relationship, I think, a little bit of fan relationship.
Oh, sure. I mean, we played with them in 95, 96. They were called Bling back then. We were in a band called Reset. We did like a little, like small tour of Quebec with them. And there was like, I guess some mutual respect, and they were a bit older than us, but they saw us play, and we had a
we were
really,
definitely fanboys.
Yeah, I was a fan of Bling. Yeah. And so one day, just to backtrack the story a little bit, one day Blink was playing in Burlington, which is about 3-4 hours from where we live, or 2-3 hours. I had a law exam that day, I had a big exam, and I'm like, you know what? And we had a band, I'm like, I need to go reconnect with them and like hopefully give them a demo of our band. So me and a friend just drove there, and we were in the middle of a festival, and we somehow were able to, hey Mark, come here. And you remember us? It's Reset. Oh yeah, and he brought us backstage, we hung out, and they were coming out in Montreal a few weeks later. And I was like, okay, let's go out for dinner, I'll set everything up, blah, blah, blah. So we go for dinner, we kind of reconnect, and he gave me an advance copy of the album that was just about to change the whole world. And I listened, I was like, oh my God, it's gonna be the biggest thing in the entire world. And then a few weeks later, they came on the Warped Tour. And finally we had our demos, and we gave him a demo, we had I'd Do Anything on it. And a few, like 3-4 weeks later, he wrote me, he was in New York City for the MTV Music Awards in his hotel room. He's like, I'm super sick. All I've been doing all day is listening to I'd Do Anything. It's my favorite song right now. I love it. Let me know how I can help you in any way. And it was like surreal because he was about to play to millions of people. They were the biggest band in the world. And we were in our basement getting this email saying like, you know, like my favorite song of all time is I'd Do Anything right now. So fast forward a few months later, we asked him, hey, like, if you still love the song, would you be open to the idea of, you know, like, kind of singing on it and being on our record? And, I mean, to his credit, and just to see how generous it was, he had no reason to do that. We were the smallest band in the world, nobody knew us. And he said yes, didn't get paid for it or anything, just did it because I think he has this...
He actually refused to get paid for it. Our record label offered to pay him for it, and he's like, no, I don't want anything.
I think
he regrets that
maybe, yes.
Today. Apparently, I heard from somebody that,
really?
that he said this dumbest thing I ever did was not take points off the record. Because he was offered, but he was so sweet, and we really appreciate it, Mark, if you're out there listening.
Because I think it's one of his whole thing is that, and I think he's done it a lot in his career, is to help younger bands that are coming up and be featured on a bunch of albums, and he does it for so many bands. And we were one of the first ones, I think, with Phoenix DX, and
I think it's a big part of how we became successful and how the spotlight was put on us early on. So we owe a lot to Mark Hoppus. Thank you.
Very great.
Yeah, and interesting that, you know, later on you became kind of like one of the longevity names on board, right?
Yeah, I mean, there was a guy, Finn McKenty, who's a
big pop punk blogger,
pop punk blogger that called us one of the what did he call it?
It's
help me, Ariel. What did Finn call us? It's one of the not the Godfathers of
Rushmore, Mount Rushmore.
Oh, the Mount Rushmore of pop punk. There's Blink 182, Sum 41, Simple Plan,
Good Charlotte.
and Good Charlotte. Yeah. Which, you know,
I agree.
That's just one person. But yes, we did become, you know, a band that 20 years later we're still here. We're playing big festivals. We still release new music. We have good, you know, a good fan base.
Once that door opened, we just kicked it in and we went in, and we're not going back. Yeah. And we've been lucky. We've been here since then.
Well, you had so many highlights in your career. I pick one out. You played a college festival in Mumbai.
Yeah.
Yes.
How was that?
That was super cool. I really would like to go back. I know we have a lot of fans in India, and it was really surreal to go to those kinds of places. You know, like the first time we went to Southeast Asia, places like the Philippines, Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, Japan, Australia, all these places. But yeah, India was very surreal, and but we love going to new places, and we still do it to this day. Yeah, I would love to go back to India. That was a really fun time.
We played in Vietnam. We played in South Africa. We play all over South America, like in
Venezuela,
Colombia,
Ecuador.
So it's like, I think it's been a chance for us to see the world and to go where our fans are. That's been sort of our mission since day one, is to like try to see the world, but also try to go play for people that maybe don't get shows as often as they would love, and try to provide, you know, whatever we do for them, you know. So it's been really cool, and that show was crazy. Like the PA went down a few times.
The power went out at some point, right at the right moment. It was interesting because we were playing the song perfect, and the power went out, and then the people kept singing it, and then it went, and it came back in for the last chorus, and I was like, this is like, we couldn't have written this better. Yeah.
Magic.
Yeah.
MULATSCHAG.
Speaking about recording songs, how much has the way you guys record changed over the years through, you know, evolving technology?
I think the biggest way and the biggest time that or the biggest moment where it did change for us was from album 1 to album 2. In the past, I didn't really have a lot of knowledge of recording and stuff like that, so we would get together and jam, and like we would jam in a rehearsal space to figure out the songs. And then on album 2, I ended up moving to Vancouver, and so we were far away. Chuck came out and we wrote some songs together, and at that point I started using Pro Tools. I started using the digital world of, you know, music to be able to write, and then at that point we started writing songs and demoing them together and then bringing it to the band. And ever since then, since the second album, that process has been the same. Obviously we're getting better at writing, better at recording, and now I've even, you know, helped produce some of the records. But yeah, the process has always been kind of the same. Chuck comes up with a theme, main hook line, and then together we build everything else. Music, riffs, all the lyrics, all the melodies, and we just kind of chip away, and we're pretty slow. We like to make everything, you know, perfect to the point where sometimes maybe we overdo it. But the process ever since 2003-4 has been always the same. You know, we get together and try to get inspired, try to write something that we hope that if we heard for the first time, we think would be awesome, you know. And unfortunately, we'll never know, because by the time the songs are done, I've heard them 1,000 times. But that's always just the point, try to write something that we think that we would be fans of.
MULATSCHAG.
When you guys are on tour, how often do you FaceTime with loved ones? You got 2 daughters, right?
Yep, every day we talk to them. My daughters are pretty independent. They don't need me that much, so I don't always FaceTime with them, but I try to reach out to them every day. But they're always so busy. They got stuff doing. They're going to school, or they're riding horses, or they're out with their friends. Or yesterday my daughter was watching a movie at a movie theater. So, but we that's the cool thing about technology. When we first started touring, you know, in our first band, we were 17 years old. We had like a calling card. And it'd be like, if you had a girlfriend, it's like, okay, I'll call you maybe next week. And there was so little contact. And now it's like text. As soon as I wake up, I can call my wife, I can talk to her, I can talk to my kids, I can see them. I don't feel like I'm missing out as much as I would have if we were touring in the 90s, you know?
Yeah, it makes a big difference. Like, you know, for me, it's like every morning, every night when they come back from school. And I even like, so we've been going, so my son plays a lot of hockey, so my wife would be like, okay, here's the hockey practice, and I can watch him go, and it's like, so you feel like you're still kind of there, you know? It makes a big difference.
MULATSCHAG! Important part of your band's career is the foundation. What's the achievement so far, what would you say, and what are the plans for the foundation in the future?
Yeah, we've been able to donate over like $2 million so far since inception since we started. So we're very proud of that. We were able to help many different, you know, like charities, mostly in Canada and Quebec, where we're from. So we're really able to have an impact, you know, in our hometown, in our home country, home province. So that's, I think it's a lot of pride. What's the most special is when we get to meet the people that we've helped and the charities, because I think we've made a bit of a choice to focus on smaller charities, where like if they get a grant of like 10,000 or 20,000 or 25,000, it's a big change for them. It's a big, like, it really helps them stay alive, you know, as opposed to the multi-million charities where it doesn't make that big of a difference, you know. So you're really able to see,
it's something tangible that you can see the result of our efforts, you know.
Yeah, and like it's also an inspiration, because you meet a lot of kids and they're like, oh man, like, you actually know that I exist, you actually care enough to make an effort to help us. It's not even just the money, but it's also like being able to be acknowledged as like, hey, you're important to us and you matter, and you're somebody that this band that tours the world like still has time for, And I think that says a lot, that speaks a lot to them, and that makes a big difference in terms of self-esteem and all that. So when you meet them and they tell you that, it's like, oh wow, it really hits home, and it makes you want to keep going. It's been tough with the pandemic. We couldn't play shows, and that's the main way that we raise money is by, playing concerts, and like $1 of every ticket goes to the foundation. So for 2 years we were not able to have any shows. So now we're finally starting again, and we're gonna get back into like being able to donate and help people, and that's feeling really good. And we just want to keep going and see how far we can take that, and how much we can raise, and how much people we can help.
MULATSCHAG.
How would you picture the world in 200 years? Will there still be rock and roll?
200 years, that's a big gap. I have no idea. We might be living in a multi-planetary system at that point. I don't even know.
I'm gonna go out and say that I think whatever music, whatever form that takes, there's still gonna be that need for like to connect through art and through like melodies. I think it's been around for, if you look, for thousands of years. People have sang and danced together.
Well, let's say, I'm sorry, let's say 200 years ago, it was the time of Beethoven and Mozart.
Right, sure.
Yeah, but there's some similarities. If you look at like, what's that famous song, Le Canon de Pachelbel, is basically Basket Case from Green Day, you know what I mean? So it's like, not that I'm saying that they ripped it off or anything, we've all used that same chord progression as well. But so there's elements of music that I think pop music and even classical composers have sort of found the recipe that makes you feel good. You know what I mean? Whether it's sad, if you're looking to be sad, if you want to feel connected to something sad or something happy,
or if you're angry,
those pop chord structures will always be there.
But I think that the spirit of rock is sort of breaking the rules and like trying to new things and trying to maybe upset some people and make them feel like uncomfortable. And I think that every generation is going to have somebody who's going to take the rules and completely change them and start something and groundbreaking. I think we have no idea because it didn't happen yet, but somebody's going to come in and have this whole new way of thinking and of writing music, and it's going to make everything feel obsolete from before, and I'm not sure what that's going to be, but that to me, even if it doesn't sound like rock, it will have the spirit of rock, because that's sort of the idea, right? It's to kind of shake the norm a little bit and step out of whatever the comfort zone is, So we'll see. I'm excited to find out.
MULATSCHAG.
Hey, what's up? I'm Pierre.
And I'm Chuck from the band Simple Plan.
And you're watching MULATSCHAG, the only TV you need.
MULATSCHAG!